Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at something pretty extraordinary happening in Canadian politics. Right on the eve of an election, April 28th, there's been this, massive political shift. And it happened fast, like just in the last 3 months.
It really is seismic, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it back in December. The Conservatives, they had a huge lead. We're talking 25 points over the Liberals.
25 points.
Yeah. And now it's completely flipped. The Liberals are actually ahead by around 5 points. That kind of swing.
Yeah.
It's just huge, not just for Canada historically, but really anywhere in the world.
It's genuinely staggering. And the key figures in all this are Pierre Poilievre for the Conservatives, known for that direct style.
Right. Often quite fiery.
And then Mark Carney, leading the charge for the Liberals, the former Bank of Canada governor. Interestingly, The Economist actually weighed in, suggesting Carney's maybe the better bet for PM.
They did. They voiced a preference there.
So that's our mission for this deep dive, trying to figure out what on earth caused this dramatic turnaround. Especially with, the trade war noise and shifting voter priorities, what's behind it all?
Exactly. And it really seems like the big driver, the earthquake's epicenter, if you will, is economics, especially how it connects with that trade war President Trump started.
Okay, let's dig into that. The trade war. I remember the tariffs, that cherished 51st state comment. How did that really change the game politically in Canada?
Well, what's interesting is how it sort of amplified economic worries that were already there. Canada had this productivity problem, basically, how much the economy produces per worker. Michael Ignatieff, the former Liberal leader, used to talk about it.
Right, that's been a long-term thing.
It has. And then more recently, real GDP per person actually declined, took the country back to like 2017 levels per person.
Sure.
So the trade war hits, and suddenly everyone's laser focused on economic strength, resilience, growth. How do we weather this?
Okay. So it wasn't just the trade war itself, but how it landed on top of existing economic anxiety.
Precisely. Think about industries relying on U.S. trade. Tariffs mean uncertainty, potential job losses. It makes economic leadership front and center for voters.
Which leads us, I suppose, to Mark Carney. Suddenly his background as a central banker looks, pretty relevant.
Extremely relevant. When you look at the polling, voters were actually pointing to his Bank of Canada experience. They felt he could handle the economic turbulence, especially the trade stuff.
Makes sense.
And what's also fascinating is how both parties, Liberals and Conservatives, seem to have landed on, pretty similar policies, growth-focused stuff.
Really? Like what?
Both talking about investing more in energy, in housing, and both trying to avoid big tax increases. It's even been pointed out that some ideas Poilievre pushed initially, Carney seems to have adopted, or versions of them at least.
Interesting convergence. But okay, let's shift gears slightly. Before this economic focus took over, wasn't Canadian politics, maybe under Trudeau, getting more divided along cultural lines, identity politics and all that?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. There was definitely a feeling picked up by pollsters and commentators that things had become more polarized. Part of it was that focus on identity issues and maybe a perception, rightly or wrongly, among some voters of a kind of moral lecturing.
A preachy tone, some called it.
Exactly. And Pierre Poilievre really tapped into that feeling. The Conservatives positioned themselves as the pushback against that preachy soft left approach. The Economist even noted, hints of Trumpism. That "Make Canada Great Again" slogan popped up.
Right, I remember that. So how did Carney handle that? Did he lean into the culture stuff, or?
No, quite the opposite, it seems. He made a very conscious effort to steer away from the divisive identity politics. The message became much more about unity, pragmatism, patriotism, bringing people together.
So focusing on common ground, practical things.
Exactly. Things Canadians across the board care about.
Yeah.
He put forward, actual plans.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Like a big house building program, specific targets, reforming the carbon tax so consumers don't feel the pinch so directly, and even adjusting immigration numbers to match what the housing market can actually handle to keep public support strong. Real kitchen table stuff.
Practical solution.
Right. Now, again, Poilievre also has policies on housing and affordability, but his brand, his image had become so linked to fighting those culture wars.
So even if the policies were similar.
It maybe put him at a disadvantage when the mood shifted. People seem to want less confrontation, more focus on, stability and getting things done, especially with the economy looking shaky.
So it feels like the story is economic anxiety met a desire to move past the culture clashes, and Carney's Liberals caught that wave. Is that simplifying it too much?
No, I think that's a good summary of the main currents. The trade war absolutely pushed economics to the top, and alongside that, yes, a shift away from polarization towards pragmatic unity seemed to really help Carney.
But the election's still close. Are there still wobbles? Things that could change the outcome? Lingering uncertainties?
Oh, definitely. This isn't over till it's over. First, Canada's electoral system means seats don't always perfectly track the popular vote. Last-minute shifts can have big impacts.
Okay, the system itself.
Then there's Carney himself. He's still relatively new to frontline politics, right? Not a career politician. And there's been some chatter about him being maybe a bit thin-skinned when facing criticism. How he handles the final stretch pressure matters.
Your point. Anything else?
Well, defense spending is a big one. There's pressure to spend more given the global situation, but neither party has really laid out a clear funded plan for how they do that. It's a bit of a gap.
It's a major issue to leave vague.
It is. And of course, the big external factor, the U.S. trade situation. Will things ease up? Stay tense? That's largely out of Canada's hands, but could impact things significantly. Lots of uncertainty there still.
So wrapping this up, this huge Canadian political shift seems really rooted in two key things. One, the economy, pushed center stage by trade fears. Two, a move away from divisive culture war talk towards pragmatic unity, which seems to have boosted the Liberals under Carney.
I think that captures it well. And what's really interesting, looking beyond Canada, is what this might signal for other center-left parties elsewhere. You know, facing similar economic pressures, social divisions.
Could be a template?
Potentially.
Or
at least it shows how quickly political landscapes can change when these big economic and social forces collide. It really makes you think about what drives voters when things feel uncertain.
Absolutely. Which leaves us, and you, with a final thought to chew on. Given how fast things changed in Canada, what does this tell us about politics in other countries facing similar storms? When push comes to shove, what really swings votes in times of anxiety and change? Definitely something to ponder. Thanks for this deep dive.